Hi, everyone. This is acyuta-bhava from Nightlight Astrology. Happy Friday, everybody. Today, we're going to talk about the ingress of Mercury into the sign of Aries, which is happening late Saturday night over the weekend, and which will immediately start creating a mutual reception with Mars in the sign of Gemini. So let's take a look at this. I'm going to point out some of the highlights of this transit that will be coming up. I've got just the traditional 7 in for now. I'll be breaking down some of the outer planetary transits later in the month. But for now, here's what you can see. We are looking at Saturday night into Sunday morning, Mercury moving into the sign of Aries, and then immediately forming a mutual reception with Mars and Gemini. What is a mutual reception? It means that two planets are in each other's signs. Mars is in Gemini, Mercury's sign, while Mercury is in Aries, which is Mars's sign. So the two forming mutual reception are in cahoots. They are telepathically communicating with each other. They're also in a sextile. What is a sextile? It's an aspect that is of the nature of Venus. So you've got very smooth harmonization between Mercury and Mars. That means that the air is going to be, you could say, the celestial air is being toned by the energies of Mercury and Mars across the month. Sorry, here we go. So you can see this picking up. First of all, you're going to see Mercury crossing through a sextile with Saturn by April 10th. If we go forward a little bit more than that, this is where it gets really exciting, because now you're going to see this forming around April 15th. You've got the sextile starting to form with the engagement from Mercury to both Mars and Jupiter, who are also in a trine with one another. And then Mercury is going to go, it's combust, but Mercury is going to go into the heart of the sun, as the sun is also in sextiles with Jupiter and Mars. So this is going to pop right around here. Right, the 14th through the 18th is a very powerful window this month of April. You really have Mercury and Mars working together very well. You've got an exalted sun, a Mars-Jupiter trine. This is, to me, one of the most powerful transits of the year, even though it's very brief, because of all the configurations so closely with planets that are so strong. So I'm looking at Martial energy, Jupiterian energy, and Mercurial energy, which is kind of that strong, expansive, noble, action-oriented, and mental energy. So at any rate, this is what we will be breaking down piece by piece in the weeks ahead. But what's happening this weekend, again, is you're going to see Mercury move into the sign of Aries, Mars' sign, and start creating that mutual reception. And it's beginning, by the way, it's just beginning to lose visibility as the morning star, and it's going to start its change of phase again. We'll start moving towards the conjunction with the sun, and then eventually emerging as the evening star. So it is going through, Mercury's going through a transition as all of this is happening, but boy, does it have some really nice reception with Jupiter and Mars later in the month. So with Jupiter, and then a nice aspect with, I am all tongue-tied, nice reception with Mars, and then a really nice aspect with Jupiter. So anyway, what can we watch for with this transit? So when you take Mercury, who is a god of highways, travelers, markets and merchants, words, games, Mercury is a planet that is very adaptable, changeable, like money or goods changing place in the markets, or like people coming and going on highways and pathways of travel. Mercury is like the messenger, the mailman. Mercury is also, in a sense, related to the rational mind, but not in an overly structured way, more in the sense of problem solving, wit, communication, speech, linguistics, learning, and also anything that would have to do with technology or maybe particular detail-oriented skills or abilities. And then you're putting that Mercurial energy and you are combining it with Mars energy. So Mars energy is going to be action-oriented. It's going to be strong, muscular. It is going to be competitive, or maybe prone to conflict and war or battle. Cutting or severing belong to Mars. So when you put that together, you can have a combination that is both communicative, adaptable, and aggressive. You can have mental, verbal intensity. You can have a kind of executive style of communication, quick, fast, hard, decisive, maybe severe, maybe a little aggressive, or confrontational. People can find that they're sharp-tongued during this transit, and that battles of words happen more easily than normal, or that you find that you're more easily agitated mentally or verbally. This is a great period for sports. I would anticipate some really dynamic things happening in the world of sports during this time, important conversations, questions about communication, or, like athletes saying controversial things. In fact, just yesterday, this is already Mars and Gemini. Remember, just yesterday, there was something to do with Kevin Durant and some, I mean, I saw this, I scroll my headlines once or twice a day, and I saw something about Kevin Durant posting controversial tweets or something like this. And I haven't even really read the story, but I mean, not that I really care that much personally, because, it's like people have rude, crude, sharp tongues and minds a lot. And then, I think we tend to be so shocked when someone says something that's like harsh or rude or aggressive. But if we're honest, a lot of people in private think or speak that way, even though it's not necessarily right. So, but things could become more public, and there could be more of a, almost like a public referendum on speech. Hate speech could come up, policing people on their speech, defensiveness or moodiness and speech could come up. Not that we don't already have, not that we're already sort of, we're not saturated by that kind of stuff anyway, but debate and argumentation, mental busyness and stress, sharp-tongued, competition in money markets, and language. The other idea here being that there could be lots of mobilization of many different resources for many different things, kind of lots of irons in the fire, lots of chefs in the kitchen potentially could get heated. Also, this idea of technological progress. For example, I have been planning since I saw this transit to redo all of my digital stuff. By that, I mean, like, okay, I've got to reorganize all of my data, my folders, just almost like you have to clean your bedroom once in a while. You got to clean your online presence once in a while. For me, anyway, I do like spring cleaning for your digital presence, like just, files sitting in different folders. I have to get organized. This is a good time to do that. Or if you have to go to the DMV and get a license, or I don't know, just busy paperwork, administrative stuff that you have to do. We're in the middle of moving. And so, one of the things that I know I'm going to be doing is, when you move, you have like, you're setting up this new account for your electricity bill, and you're dealing with this, and you got so many different things happening at once. So that kind of energy is definitely going to be in the air for the month of April. Direct and decisive or enthusiastic speech. Like if you think about, Mercury, Mars, you think about two people who are jacked up on espresso offering Saturday morning opinions to one another that don't really matter maybe, but they're just having fun, and they're a group of friends kind of taking the piss out of each other, this kind of thing, rude or blunt statements. Now, one thing that you will notice with Mars in Gemini is the tendency to interrupt or to go in many different directions, or divergent opinions, or the ability to hold space for multiple different ideas or perspectives. And sometimes there's just this kind of mental clatter that goes with it. You also have different kinds of games that people, court games, back and forth games, and anything like that's on a court that goes back and forth. I've said this many times, like a hockey puck going back and forth, or a basketball going back and forth. You also have people that will try to make just or righteous points with anger, bullying, or aggression. And that can happen in your home, at work, or, online, social media. So be careful not to get baited into lots of like debate and argumentation with people. That'll be pretty intense for the month of April, potentially. So one thing that I think I wanted to show all of you today is this is one of my favorite books, The Archetypal Universe by Ren Butler. You guys have heard me talk about it before. It's a great desk reference, especially when there's pairings like this. I'll take and write down a list of things, and then if I feel a little stuck, I'll crack open Ren's book and try to pick up some more ideas to put into my talks. It's a really good cookbook for people who are into archetypal astrology. Anyway, the reason that I wanted to mention this is because if you are an astrologer and you are trying to brush up on your vocabulary or develop a repertoire of words and language, like half of good reading in astrology, you're going to do readings for people, half of a good reading is being able to speak and communicate, to be articulate, to organize your thoughts, to be able to draw on multiple associations, images, ideas, to offer your opinions within the matrix of images in the chart. This is a really good time in the month of April to be developing vocabulary or more precise verbal or intellectual skills. And like for me, one of the easiest things that I recommend for my students to do, there's a couple of books like this. Robert Hand has a good one too, but The Archetypal Universe is a good book because it has basically just word combinations for all the different combinations of placements. For about the first 5 or 6 years of my online practice in terms of content creation, what I would do is I would list the transit for the day and then just list bullet points of combinations of images and words. And people really loved it. And then I eventually switched out of that style and into other styles. But that's a big part of what astrology is. So if you want to get better at it, this is a great month to develop. Like if you were going to get a Rosetta Stone program to learn Spanish, that would be good this month, or, anything where you might sharpen up your skills or abilities with something. It's not a bad time, for example, to enjoy playing cards every night, even mundane, like just games you could have a lot more fun with. In my house, the game that my wife and I really like to play is called the Settlers of Catan, I think it's called. Yeah, we just call it Catan, but it's a really fun game, and it's all about trading. It's hard to explain. I don't know if you've never played it. It's really hard to explain, and I'll just sound like a weird Dungeons and Dragons playing person or something. Which I've played that before too, so no offense to my D&D friends. But at any rate, it's a good time for lightness. So I want to make sure we contrast that quality of Mercury Mars with the kind of heavier, like hate speech and debate and rhetoric and sword fighting with people and in harsh words, and like yeah, that's there, but also it's pretty fun and adaptable. It's game like, it's the kind of thing where as springtime is coming here, and my daughter every day, she's been saying, I'm so excited to wear short sleeves again because I just don't like the long sleeves. I just don't feel like anyone should have to wear long sleeves. She's like, such a Sagittarius sun. She likes her freedom. She doesn't like, don't put anything on my arms. I want them free. Anyway, and you'll find that I often find that in whatever transit it is that I'm describing, I'll end up sort of unintentionally embodying, some of the transit sometimes. And so even like just the kind of fun, all over the place style of me delivering this talk today, you could see as Mercury and Mars starting to, or at least for now, Mars and Mercury sign, which I was actually born with. So, okay, now, on the spiritual side of things, maybe a slightly deeper take philosophically on this transit. Mercury and Mars is connected to potentially like the idle, gossiping mind. In the Republic, Plato said that this sublunary world is essentially a world of opinion. And let's take a look at the etymology of opinion, which I'm going to pull up. So the etymology of opinion, here it comes. A judgment formed or a conclusion reached, especially based on evidence that does not produce knowledge or certainty. conjecture, fancy, belief, whatever one thinks, appreciation. This sort of, when we say this is just my opinion, the word has always tended toward a judgment or view regarded as influenced more by sentiment or feeling than reason. The meaning, formal statement by a judge or other professional, in contrast to opinion, or even public opinion, the prevailing view in a given community on any matter of general interest or concern. So now, I'm not someone who wants to cancel the word opinion, but I would say that one of the things that, is it's very clear that it's a part of the zeitgeist at the moment with the advent of social media becoming more popular, is that, we're in the coffee shop or the terrace cafe of life right now, where a lot of opinions are being shared all the time, and you have to be really careful exposing yourself to opinions, your own or other people's. One of the teachings, whether it's in Buddhism or in yoga, even you can pull on verses from the New Testament, is that we have to be really, and going back to Plato again, we have to be careful of essentially mistaking opinions for truth, that we can get the two confused. And this world is in constant flux and constant movement and change. And when we try to locate truth in something that's constantly moving, there's a weird way in which our own relative position within that movement, it makes it very difficult to arrive at anything firm, to stand on anything firm ontologically or epistemologically. It's difficult. And so for most people, truth is something that you learn to locate as the very source of your being and as this underlying source of all things. Or sometimes truth is a via negativa. It's not a something, an ontological essence. It's simply a practice of negating appearances and opinions that like to come in and take us away from some unspeakable presence, like the Tao or something like that. The Tao that can be named is not the Tao. Tao that can be spoken is not the Tao, right? So it's that kind of like neti, not this, not that. So sometimes there's different practices around the world, but one of the things that most mystical or religious traditions have told us is to be careful of immersing ourselves in the world of opinions, starting with our own. Opinions are rapidly moving judgments in the river of change. And it's easy for us to, it's like, one way I've heard it described before is it's like chewing the chewed, like cud, yikes. But that's something we have to be aware of. And Mercury, Mars, when they come together, can be a sign of the temptation to spin around in words and opinions and ideas and temporary judgments and stuff like that. In the Mahabharata, there is a verse that I was really taken by yesterday as I was actually preparing this talk. I'm going to read it to you. In the Mahabharata, Dharmaraj asked Yudhishthir Maharaj, "What is the news in this world?" And Yudhishthir Maharaj replied, "The news of this world is that the conditioned jiva souls are being cooked by Mahakal, universal time, in the pot of worldly illusion, which is heated by the fire of the sun and burns on the firewood of the days and nights. The pot is stirred by the months and the seasons, and within the pot the jiva souls are suffering so much, covered with the masala, flavoring of kama, lust, krodha, anger, lobha, greed, mada, pride, moha, illusion, matsarya, envy, and the desires for kanak, wealth, kamini, women, and pratishta, fame. This is the only news in the world." Okay, let's switch the idea of women, since this is obviously intended for a male audience, and let's talk about just, broadly speaking, sex desire. So this verse is sort of saying, again, broadly speaking, that the only news in the world, and this, for some, you might hear this and go, wow, it's a bleak view. And yeah, it is. The news of this world is that the conditioned souls are being cooked by universal time in a pot of illusion. heated by constant fluctuations of months and seasons, and that the jiva souls are suffering, that they're covered with the flavorings of lust, anger, greed, pride, illusion, envy, the desire for wealth, sex, and fame. And that's really the only thing going on here. Now, again, that I don't, this verse is in a sense rhetorical, because when someone says, hey, what's new? What's going on in the world? The reply you could say in this verse is, there's really nothing new under the sun. The same kind of stuff is happening. It's just different, permutations and combinations of the same kinds of things, the same kinds of problems, the same kinds of opinions, the same kinds of desires, the same kinds of faults, and so forth. Now, I don't look at that. I don't personally, because of the way that I've been trained philosophically in yoga, I don't take that to mean that there is nothing of value or beauty in the world. That verse is a rhetorical way of helping us come back to truth and reminding us not to get caught up in the, the turnstile of opinions and gossip about, ourselves or the world. And that's something that I think underlying my sense is that over the next few weeks, we will be looking very deeply at that as a kind of a subtext of this entire transit. Because on the one level, it's like, yes, all of these different combinations are going on. But the other thing is that, all of these transits, all of them are in a sense, we're studying them specifically so that we can stay in touch with truth while the world is being churned and cooked by Mahakal, universal time, in the pot of worldly illusion. We study these transits specifically so that we don't get overly swept up in them, so that we move through them and with them like currents in a river, at which point then we start to recognize the world as divine. Otherwise, it's an alchemical crock pot filled with illusion. And that's, again, broadly speaking, that's something that you see across the board in different philosophical schools that practiced astrology in the ancient world. This view might sound bleak. It's not meant to say there is no beauty, that there's only bleakness. It's meant to say, don't get lost in the turnstile of opinions. They're a dime a dozen. If you want them, you don't even have to pay for them. You can just scroll through your Facebook feed for 10 minutes and you'll be filled to the brim with opinions. So, in the next few weeks, the other thing I would mention is watch the subtext of your mind and of the how righteous opinions can get, even though they have a lifespan or a shelf life sometimes of about 10 minutes. So is it worth it? That's an underlying question that I know I'll be asking throughout the month. Is it worth it? Is it worth my mental time and energy? Is it worth it to get into this confrontation? Is it worth it to waste my time in something that might be fun, but is utterly pointless? I'm not, again, so if you have that discernment on board with you, it's a lot less likely that this transit brings out the worst, which would be almost like you're not just in the fire of Mahakal, universal time, being boiled in illusion, but you're actually stirring it up and throwing some cayenne in it, with Mars and Mercury in mutual reception. So watch for that. When these things step up, there's always, especially on the level of the mind, when Mars and Mercury stuff get together, the need for quiet, for contemplative space, for prayer, for meditation, for reflection, for the tending to our inner life. The same transit can bring out the need for that, because we can easily go like, whoa, I remember in New York City when I lived there, in the springtime, there was always this phenomenon where as soon as it was like April, May, there'd be about a month where there was just sirens going all the time. And it's because when that like yang energy comes out in the seasonal year, in the 4 seasons in the Northern Hemisphere, that tendency toward speed and aggression, and it's very youthful, and it's potent and sort of virile, and that energy also, that comes with a lot of accidents and with a lot of banging into things, and it's an emergent energy, but it can be an energy of emergency. So you have to be careful of that, because we are in that time of year, symbolically speaking, where there's just a lot of like youthful spring zodiac energy with us right now, Mars and Aries, Mars and Mercury in each other's signs. And you can feel that wherever you're at in the world, even if it's not literally spring where you're at. So just watch for that. And yeah, if you ever are like, which media outlet should I tune into? This month it's a good one to refine your language set as an astrologer. Like that, this is a great month for that. If you want to, and again, just a plug to my buddy Ren Butler's book, The Archetypal Universe, my favorite wordsmithing book for a desk reference for astrologers. Also, if you need a media news channel to tune into as an alternative for at least this month, remember this one. The news of the world is that the conditioned Jiva souls are being cooked by Mahakal, universal time, in the pot of worldly illusion, heated by the fire of the sun, which burns on the firewood of the days and nights, stirred by the months and seasons. Within the pot, the Jiva souls are suffering so much, covered with the flavoring of lust, anger, greed, pride, illusion, envy, the desire for wealth, sex, and fame. This is the only news in the world. So happy Friday. I'm just playing. Have a great weekend, everybody. We'll see you again next week. Bye.